So I'm Steve Brown. I'm the statewide research and extension entomologist for the LSU Ag Center, and I work all row crops and pastures and peanuts. And so pretty much if you guys have a question on row crops or anything with entomology, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is going to be at the end of this talk. And I'm stationed out of the Dean Lee Research and Extension Center, so I'm only one parish over in Rapides Parish. So if you guys ever have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to help. All right, so getting started, we're going to move into cotton, and cotton prices as of late have kind of really started to pick up some. They're not as good as grain prices, but I know we still have some interest in cotton, and so I'm just kind of go into some cotton management recommendations, and something that a lot of guys, if they may not have grown cotton in a while, early season insect management is one of the most important considerations you need to make when it comes to cotton. And you can see from this picture, this is neonic treated seed on the left hand side, and then on the right hand side, my face is kind of in the way, but what that says is non-treated. And so, you're looking at the difference between having a seed treatment versus not. And so that's probably a 500 pound to the acre yield difference. And so just right off the bat. And then you've got to think about your relative maturity. So if the terminals are blown in those cotton plants and you've taken a lot of damage, that's going to delay maturity, you've lost yield, and that's going to make managing for other insects going to be harder as the season goes further. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So looking at yield, so that's that picture of the non-treated. I mean, here's our yields, and this was out of the St. Joseph Research Station. I was actually originally stationed up in Northeast Louisiana, and so, but I've seen similar outcomes, and some of my trials are similar down here in the central region as well. So, I mean, it still goes to show that the value of what seed treatments bring to the table for cotton, especially under severe thrips pressure, because thrips don't discriminate where you live or where you plant your cotton. Thrips are all across the state. And so with our non-treated, we're running about 850 pounds of lint in our best treatment, which is orthene and gaucho. We're running, almost 500 pounds yield lint difference. And so, as an entomologist, typically what I recommend is orthene at 6.4 ounces per hundredweight. And then that's an overtreatment of something you get from, let's say, the company as gaucho at 0.375 milligrams AI per seed. So that's, this orthene, the 6.4 of orthene is actually an overtreatment of gaucho from the factory. And you can see the benefit that it brings. It's not significant or statistically significant, but it is numerically significant. Where we added orthene, we picked up probably another 75 to 100 pounds of lint. Eris is another good option. That's available from Bayer as a seed treatment. And then Ag Logic, if you guys are still running granular insecticides, so if you have Timic boxes still in the back of your planters, we do have an alternative for Timic, and it is Ag Logic. And running at the Timic rate at 3.5 pounds per acre, it performs exactly like Timic should. And so that is an option as well. So this is the newest, latest, greatest thing from Delta Pine. This is called Thrive On. And so as an entomologist, I've looked at Thrive On for the past 5 years now. And really what it brings to the table for us is it brings, a really good profile against thrips and ligas. And it's so good on thrips that we can almost get rid of using insecticide seed treatments. And so that's something that, you can think about going forward, is that it can help change your thrips management plan early season. Now, plant bugs, it's not a silver bullet for plant bugs. I would almost call it a silver bullet for thrips, but it is something that is going to be, you guys can consider going forward. It's not commercially available yet. It will be commercially available in 2022 from what the company tells us. Right now it's stewarded, which is a regulatory phase in EPA that they have to get past. And so it's not commercially available right now, but hopefully it will be commercially available in 2022. And it's going to be a good new toolbox, a good new tool to have in our toolbox for thrips and plant bugs. And, how I put it towards people is if you sprayed for plant bugs 6 times last year, you may only spray 4. If you sprayed for plant bugs 4 times, you may only spray twice. And if you sprayed for thrips at all, you're not going to have to spray for thrips again. So this is a picture of, this is Thrive On cotton on the right. This big, really pretty, just really beautiful looking early season cotton. And this is just cotton with a seed treatment on the left. And so you can see the difference in just a BT trait, bringing how well it controls thrips versus not. So, I mean, versus not having the BT trait. So it really is going to change the way we manage thrips, and a lot of our early season, thrip shots will be a thing of the past. And it's almost so much so that we may not have to use seed treatments going forward. So we're looking at that as entomologists to see if we still have that value and if it's going to help offset resistance. So I think, we'll hopefully have answers to that here in the near future, but just look forward to this coming out in the not too distant future. Okay, so moving away from thrips and plant bugs, the second most, or really our third most detrimental insect that we fight is bollworms. And so realistically, what the takeaway from this slide is just that if you're going to go after bollworms in cotton, something like Prevathon, Besiege are going to be where you want to be. I mean, you can see on this graph that 20 ounces of Prevathon significantly yields higher than 14 ounces of Prevathon. 10 ounces of Besiege significantly yields higher than 7.2 ounces of Besiege. So we do see a rate response when it comes to these products, especially if you're chasing worms deep in the canopy. And so, I always typically like to tell guys that, if you're not going after eggs, if you're going after live worms in the canopy, you're going to need to use a higher rate, 20 ounces of Prevathon, 10 ounces of Besiege. If you're just going after eggs, like if you're catching an egg lay perfectly on Bollgard 2 cotton, and you've got no live larvae, you've got young eggs kind of positioned towards the top, then you can potentially get away with a lower rate of Prevathon, say that 14 ounces or that 7 ounces of Besiege. But those situations are few and far between. So most everybody, you're chasing live worms that have moved in the canopy, and you're going to have to step up your rate, and it really does make a difference. Okay, so moving into corn. So this is actually some corn work that I had done in the northeast part of the state. And so what we saw here is we saw a 50 bushel to the acre increase where we had Poncho 1250 over the non-treated. Now, this is going to be a little bit different for the Red River area because we have a different soil type. And most guys down here are not really, as reduced or minimum till as the guys up in the north part of the state where they have the jigger silt loam. And so, and a lot of our guys rotate a lot more frequently down here than they do up in the northeast. Up in the northeast part of the state, they'll run corn behind corn for 10 years in a row. This is where you get these really devastatingly large populations of below ground insects that can cause yield loss like this. But the takeaway is still the same. We still need to protect our investment. And with corn prices being, higher than they've been in a long time, protecting your investment early season with a quality seed treatment is going to be important. Now, realistically, if you've been corn behind corn, you don't disc your ground, you don't do your very minimum till, I still would recommend using Poncho 1250. But if you do fall or spring tillage and you disc your ground and you rotate and you have a good rotation practice for whatever it may be, then Poncho 500 it will probably be more than adequate to control what you have. But if you've had southern corn rootworm issues in the past, or you've had sugarcane beetle or wireworm problems, then Poncho 1250 is going to be your best treatment. And so, and we typically see, and I see this when we're looking at this, I've seen it almost every year, that not maybe quite to this extent of 50 bushels to the acre, but we typically always see a nice response from Poncho 1250 and Poncho 500 over the non-treated. Okay, so looking at kernel and by BT technology, so this is really kind of getting into the BT genetics. And so I see, a lot of guys really want these pretty corn ears, which you see this receptive variety. Well, the problem with this is that these same BT genetics that you're looking at on this picture are what's in cotton as well. And so for resistance management, this is planting these Tricepta or Leptra varieties that contain this VIP3A gene are going to realistically not be where we want to be when it comes to resistance management for these BT traits. for really the reason that, we need to protect our cotton growers. And so, another benefit to not planting VIP is actually this variety here that says VT2P on the right hand side. Even with that little bit of worm feeding, out yielded this receptive variety right here. And so, I get a lot of questions from grow guys all the time. I've got worms, they're feeding on the tip, and how much feeding does it take to cause yield loss? And Mississippi State did some work a few years ago that showed that it takes about 60 kernels per ear to really result in statistically significant yield loss. So yield loss that we can pick up using statistical methods, which is pretty shocking that it takes that many kernels per ear to really result in yield loss. And I'm not talking kernels like these tip kernels here that you see these worms feeding on. We're talking kernels towards the bottom of the husk, the big yield contributing kernels. A lot of the tip kernels up at the top of the plant or top of the ear are not going to make it into the combine. They're going to be spit out the back and they're not going to make it into the hopper. So, if worms eat those, you haven't lost anything. And so even though some of these look bad, realistically, you're actually not taking a hit in yield. And so we don't need to plant the VIP3A varieties. That's going to be the Triceptus, the Leptras, the Agrasure Vipteras. We don't need that to maximize yield in Louisiana. And really what we're doing by planting those, we are sacrificing our cotton growers' ability to control worms. And so you saw in those graphs I just posted that, we have realistically one mode of action that we rely on foliar to control corn earworm and bollworm. And really that's, it's the diamides, which is going to be Prevathon and Besiege. And so, we need these BT genetics in cotton to help preserve our yield. And so, the takeaway from this is you guys don't need these hot rod Tricepta, Leptra, Agrasure, Viptera varieties to maximize your yield. The Intrasex, the non-BTs even, and the double pros as VT2P, those do a very good job maximizing yield and also controlling insect issues. And so the biggest issue or the biggest way to avoid having insect problems in your ear is planting corn on time. So planting within the LSU Ag Center recommended planting window will go a long ways and help stopping corn ears, your corn earworms from moving into your corn and eating your corn ears. And this graph really shows this 1637 VYHR right here is actually VIP. That's the Leptra variety. And the 1637, same variety, YHR, is the Intrasect. So it doesn't have the VIP. See, it's missing the V. And what we see is we saw a substantially higher yield where we utilized this non-VIP hybrid versus where we had VIP. I mean, we're looking at probably 215 bushels versus 185. And then what's really telling is that where we have the VIP variety, the VIP hybrid right here, as compared to the Roundup Readies, this has no BT genes in it whatsoever. They're almost identical. And this was conducted at Dean Lee Research Station. So, I mean, we don't need the hot rod BT genetics to help maximize our yield. Realistically, if you plant your corn on time and you take care of it, get it fertilized, get weed management under control, you will yield almost, if not the same, as some of these new hot rod BT varieties. So just take that into consideration. Okay, so moving forward with, I get questions where guys are, they are, they're thinking about spraying a fungicide in their corn, and they've got corn earworms in the ears, and they want to know what they need to spray. Well, if you look here, this is actually a trial that we conducted a few years ago where we tried controlling corn earworms in a corn ear with a foliar application. And we used anything from a low rate of Prevathon to a high rate, and then a Prevathon plus a pyrethroid versus non-treated. And we saw no yield difference whatsoever. So the takeaway from that is don't try to spray for worms in the ear. And so that's why the Ag Center, we do not recommend worm sprays in the ear, because we cannot get it to pay off. And you're going to be spending a lot of money trying to control worms that aren't going to do this, that's going to do nothing for you. All right, so early season insect control in soybeans. Our biggest issue that we face here is going to be this guy right here. He's going to be the three-cornered alfalfa hopper, because he or she causes this damage right here. And so three-cornered alfalfa hoppers girdle soybeans very early in the season. And so, I know we have wheat growers in the Bulls Parish, and so guys, especially if you're rotating wheat and soybeans, or you're planting, like I said, you got your wheat crop and you've got your soybeans behind it, having a good, robust seed treatment is going to be critical in preserving your yield. All right, so one of the things that it's harder for me to show as an entomologist is to show the yield, economic impact, or the significant benefit of having a seed treatment where we where we have soybeans, or using a seed treatment in soybeans. But as an entomologist, every field crop that we grow, I recommend using a seed treatment in, for the sheer fact that we can't predict the weather. And so we can't accurately predict the weather out past about 3 days. And so, um, you know, the temperatures that it takes to slow soybean growth and vigor are not cold enough to suspend insect movement. So it may be 45 degrees, 50 degrees, cold and wet and raining, and your soybeans are stuck at the two leaf stage, or at V1 to V2. Well, guess what? Three-cornered alfalfa hoppers are going to be up and moving and feeding, and so that's not cold enough to slow them down enough to where they're not going to feed. So, controlling insects early season when when we've got suboptimal growing conditions is going to be very important. And so, same thing with late, because the later we get, there's a large number of insects in the environment, and they're out and about moving around, and so you need to get them under control. All right, so red-banded stink bugs. So I throw this up there because we have three modes of action we use to control red bandits, and it's going to be neonicotinoids, pyrethroids, and organophosphates. That's it. And so we've got to use those insecticides to manage this severe insect in our beans. And so it's really important that we rotate chemistries, and that's really what I want to show with this slide. Is rotating chemistries is very important when it comes to controlling this stink bug. Don't just throw acephate, pound after pound of acephate after it, because it's not going to do. Eventually, it's not going to do a good job because they're going to become resistant. All right. So another question I get is, we had cold weather this year. It snowed. It didn't snow. I know it didn't snow in the Bulls because it didn't snow in Rapides either. But I get questions all the time. Is it cold enough to kill red bandits? Well, this is some work done by Dr. Jeff Davis, my research counterpart on campus, who's looking at the super cooling point, or how cold does it have to be to kill a red bandit. And so from his research, the red banded stink bug super cooling point is -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Definitely hasn't been that cold. At 23 degrees Fahrenheit, your lethal time to kill half your population is 4 hours. Lethal time to kill 90% of your population is 7 hours. But at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, red bandits need to be exposed for a week to see 95% mortality. And so, and this is a little different. Dr. Davis conducted this in a lab. This is not, really respective of what's out in the wild. And so, because he has to, using scientific instruments, he has to have a cup. You can't really see this because my face is in the way, but it's a plastic cup with electrodes that he uses. He puts in a chamber to look at these insects. Well, in reality, red-banded stink bugs are going to be under leaf litter. They're going to be burrowed in clover. They're going to be in a lot of different places, and not in a plastic cup, being exposed to extreme cold. So, we've got to be really cold. I mean, I know his data says we have to be very cold to begin with. Well, when you start factoring in these microclimates, like them burrowing under leaves or getting in clover, it's got to be even colder than what he's showing to really get the real world kill that you guys are looking for. So, in a nutshell, no, it has not been cold enough for red-banded stink bugs to be controlled. All right, so what I want to show with these slides is realistically the best thing to control red-banded stink bugs are going to be the premixes. Now, my face is in the way again, and I really wish I could find a way to move that, but unfortunately PowerPoint doesn't really let me do it. But I can tell you what these bars over here show. Basically, the best thing we have to control stink bugs, even 7 days after application, is going to be your premixes. So like indigo ZC, our threshold is 4. So, imagine you can take your threshold and draw an imaginary line right across this right here. Indigo is doing well. We're bumping thresholds, so we're getting close to potentially spraying again. Leverage has failed. Belay by itself is not working very well. Lanate alone is not good. But what does work is where we mix bifenthrin and lanate, orthene and bifenthrin, and this is imidacloprid at 1.5 ounces plus 6.4 ounces of bifenthrin. These three treatments right here work the best for us, and are also some of the cheapest ones to make. And so that's really what I want you guys to take away from this, is that if you guys are going after red-banded stink bugs, the premixes with bifenthrin, either bifenthrin and lanate, bifenthrin and orthene, or for the sub $5 an acre shot, imidacloprid plus bifenthrin are some of the best ones we have. Same story, moving out to 13 days. Our numbers are starting to come down, but our indigo is broke. It had broke last week. Orthene had broke. Bifenthrin is broken. Numbers are starting to decline some. But what is still holding, even 2 weeks after application, are these bifenthrin and lanates, orthene and bifenthrin, and imidacloprid and bifenthrin. And you can see those right here. So they are very good treatments, and they are economically better suited for controlling stink bugs because they're cheaper. All right, so a few things, just last minute considerations. Loopers are easier to control than velvet beans and green clover, or loopers, are harder to control than velvet beans and green cloverworm. They're going to increase once you start spraying for stink bugs. R-stage beans, keep your defoliation below 20% once you hit R1 till you hit about R6.5. So between those two windows, keep your defoliation below 20% because that's when we start exceeding 20%, we start seeing yield loss. Also, I get questions every year about red-banded stink bug nymphs, or when I need to spray. And if you're finding red-banded stink bug nymphs, that indicates colonization, and that means you need to get them out. The nymphs means that the female has come in, she's mated, laid eggs, and the immature stink bugs are feeding on your soybeans, and they can't fly. That's the kicker. So they don't have a way to get away. So if you're finding a bunch of nymphs, whatever you sprayed before is gone, and it's no longer killing them. So take that into consideration moving forward. All right. So, and just a real quick note on grain sorghum. So I know grain sorghum acres may pick up in a voles parish. Just from you, I'm not going to read this slide to you. There's a lot of information on there, but just know this: we can control sugarcane aphids in grain sorghum. Pick the variety that is going to yield the best on your farm. Don't worry about looking for tolerant or resistant varieties. They have some out there, but the reality of the situation is like the academics like myself and my other university partners, we're no longer screening varieties or hybrids for resistance because the companies have now all done that internally. So a company is telling you what's considered tolerant or resistant, and so their recommendations are going to be different than ours. And so just what I like to tell guys is, pick the variety based on OBT trials, based on core blocks that's going to yield the best for your area, and then we'll manage the aphids after that. And so we've got great insecticides, Savanto, Transform, that work very well controlling sugarcane aphids. We've got good midge sprays that work well, and so it can be done. Don't be afraid to grow grain sorghum because of sugarcane aphids. And it definitely can be, it can be accomplished, and it is not as daunting as it was in 2013, 2014. So, like I said, we're here to help you. I mean, I'm here, I'm available to help answer any questions or help you make any management decisions that you need going forward with sugarcane aphids and grain sorghum. Like I said, that's what I'm paid to do. So if you guys ever have any questions or concerns, please feel free to call me. All right, quickly, this is a remind text message system. So if you guys haven't signed up, pretty much what it is, it's a text message system to allow specialists like myself, like Dr. Stevenson, like our new soybean specialist, Dr. Mosley, to be able to contact you in a text message format. And so all you have to do is type this number, this 81010. If you're a grain sorghum grower, type 81010 into where you would type the phone number for the person you're texting. And then in the meat of the text message, type @LA Sorghum. And what that does is it signs you up for free to our text message, the Remind app. If anybody has any kids in school, they're probably familiar with Remind. And so what it is, it's a free way for us to send you information via text. And so it's not an email, it's not a big long information chain. It's just going to be quick. Hey, I'm finding sugarcane aphids and grain sorghum in a voles parish. You guys need to start scouting. That's all it's going to be. I might give you some recommendations as far as what's working, what's not working, and I try to send one out about once a week or to once every 2 weeks. So just keep that in mind. If this interests you, please feel free to sign up. And I think it's a very good tool for us to get y'all information. Okay, so with that, I'm going to conclude my talk. This is my cell phone number, 318-498-1283, and my email address down here. So if you guys ever have any questions or concerns, please feel free to call me or email me, and I will be happy to help you in any way I can. Thank you.